A few years ago, something happened in my shop that is such a critical learning experience that I want to revisit it for the newer subscribers. I was working in my office, which is adjacent to the main shop here, and I heard a loud bang. When I investigated, I found that one of the folks who worked behind the scenes had experienced a kickback at the table saw that shot a strip of wood through the wall behind him. It penetrated 2 layers of drywall between the studs, and the end stuck out into the finishing room behind that table saw. Imagine if it had hit a person. Fortunately, nobody was hurt, but safety is important here in my shop, so I wanted to know what happened and how we could prevent it from happening again in the future. Fortunately, it was caught on film. This is a form of table saw kickback that teaches us several very important lessons, which I hope you'll take to heart. This video just may save your fingers someday. It happened while making a bevel cut, and it appeared that all the rules were being followed. There was no blade guard on the saw, but the position of the fence made it impossible to make that cut with the guard in place. There was a riving knife installed behind the blade. This is important because riving knives are essential anti-kickback devices. But why didn't that prevent this kickback? Because the riving knife shields the back of the blade, the place where almost all kickbacks originate, but this kickback occurred at the front of the blade. Watch carefully. The good workpiece is against the fence. The offcut is beneath the tilted blade. This is the proper orientation. You don't want to tilt the blade toward the fence for this type of cut, because that may cause the offcut to become trapped beneath the blade between it and the fence, where it could wedge and kick back at you. But again, this blade was properly tilted away from the fence. The reason it still kicked back is clear if you watch what happens at the end of the cut. The pusher moves the workpiece forward, but the offcut remains next to the blade. When the pusher is used to draw the workpiece away from the fence at the end of the cut, it nudges the leading end of the offcut to the left, turning the trailing end toward the blade where it's caught by a front tooth and ejected from the saw. It all happens in just 2 video frames. In about 1/30th of a second, the offcut is gone. Now that we know what happened, what could we do to avoid it happening again? Well, for one thing, if the workpiece was pushed further past the blade at the end of the cut, it may have been clear of the offcut, and contact may not have been made between the two. This is one of the important lessons we should draw from this. Whether you're making a bevel cut or not, follow through at the end of your cut to push that workpiece fully clear of everything else. The type of pusher could also be a factor. When ripping narrow strips, it may be better to use a wide push block like this homemade version, letting the blade cut right into the bottom as you push both the workpiece and the offcut past the blade. The third option may have been to raise the saw blade higher, so the path of the teeth at the front would be in a downward direction toward the top of the saw rather than toward the operator. This will change how the blade cuts though, so it might not be the perfect option with some materials. Of course, a high exposed blade can also be dangerous. But what if there was a way to make that cut with the blade guard in place? Perhaps an auxiliary fence with a low profile may be used to leave room for the blade guard. This saw, which I didn't have at the time, has an adjustable fence for that very purpose, so you can use the blade guard with the fence closer to the blade. I wish all saws had this feature. It's also worth pointing out that the operator was, thankfully, not standing directly behind the path of the blade. This is a good practice whenever possible. But the final and perhaps most critical lesson is that an offcut is never safe until the blade fully stops. Many accidents happen when a person reaches for an offcut when the blade is still spinning, and that movement can cause a similar kickback, which pulls their hand into the blade along with the workpiece. It happens more often than you might think. Wait until the blade completely stops before you reach. I'm really glad we caught it on tape. Kickbacks are a top cause of table saw injuries. While a riving knife provides a lot of protection, the best piece of safety technology ever invented for a table saw is still the blade guard. Use it. Want to see something else interesting? Ridge Carbide is the best kept secret in woodworking. I kid you not, their saw blades are second to none, both in quality and performance, and they're less expensive than the other ultra premium brands. Do yourself a favor, use the link and the discount code below this video. You will never go back to cheap blades again.